Okay, I will.
So welcome to you all today. If you haven't voted yet, it's a very easy process. It's even easier than it has been in the past. You have to fill out any documents, they just take your ID and they scan it in this machine and they print out your ballot and hand it to you. I was out of there in, what, Marlene, 3 minutes? It was, if that. I mean, it was so easy. And you don't put it in an envelope anymore like you did kind of like absentee. You actually take it over the scanner and run it on through. So it's a different process, but same thing. I still get a thrill of going and voting each and every time. It's a good thing that we do. And I was very surprised with myself. I knew I was voting on lots of things before I made my final decisions on one race, right then and there. I went to a forum last night and got some new information about people. So, continue to do your research. Continue to do your research. I looked at the League of Women Voters and I wish they had gone out to some of the other areas because my family's saying, well, who's this? Who's this? Who's running for this township? And who's running for this school board? And who's running for this? I wish we had more of those things out in the rest of Hamilton County rather than just here in the city. So I encourage you all to vote early, and then and then once again, presence at the polls, and just to be there, any poll for an hour, help out, support people, bring them water, whatever they need, because we need to have those polls covered. Because we know we need to take back municipal court. It's very important. We're never going to get any reform, judicial reform, until that happens. Next week we are going to have the endorsed slate of candidates that's running for the Cincinnati Board of Education. Marlena already spoke with us, and then the endorsed candidate. I will say, quite honestly, I did not vote for all of them. So, I mean, that is my right, and I told the beginning, why are you endorsing this person? But, this is, once again, you have to think about your candidates, and you have to think about where they stand on certain things, and somebody pushed me to the end and said, nope, I cannot vote for you.
I will say this, if you don't vote the full slate, since it is a field race, then you pump up. Yes, if you don't vote the full slate, since it is a field race, you actually give more strength to the people you choose to vote for. That's just right. The way it works.
That's right. Yeah, you do. I mean, I never, when city council runs, I have never in my life voted for 9 people. Never. I just, yeah. And so it's foolishness just to give somebody a vote just because you want to have 9. No. You vote for the people that you really feel are going to represent you. So, that's my diatribe this morning. Yes, Faith?
Was it the CFT debate that made you feel, was it the CFT debate last night?
It was the NAACP, Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition. That was the one. And so I was part of the team that designed those questions. So we had some really nitty-gritty things that the CEJC and the NAACP have been really very concerned with. And so, we pointedly asked them those questions. And it was very enlightening, so to speak. So, Albert, are you ready?
Yeah.
All righty.
We're ready for announcements. I just want to say that Faith sent me her weekend of announcements, and I have 5 pages of announcements here from Faith. I just want you to know that I looked, we printed them up. I'll give them all right, I've already sent them to Peter, so he already has them this week. We'll see it.
He sends it to me too.
Oh, getting smart. That's the way to go.
It's part of the dark side.
Right. Well, so there are lots of things going on. I do want to say that I forgot last week to mention that there was a Democratic dinner on Thursday night. I'm sorry I didn't, because Stanley was offering his spaghetti sauce, and it was really good. And I have the leftover cookies in the back, so if you haven't helped yourself to some of those cookies in the back, I just want you to know they were brand new cookies. I'll even take off the plastic there to show that they were brand new cookies. that from the spaghetti dinner. They had leftovers, and they gave them to me. They said, "You have a group," and I said, "Oh yes, we do." There you go. Oh, thank you. Okay, so announcements. No announcements? Oh, here we go. Martha.
I just want to mention something that I think is wonderful. The librarians of Claremont County are trying to unionize. And the DSA, Democratic Socialists, are helping out. And so if you get on their website, Democratic Socialist, I think you would learn more about this. I hope to help a little bit. I mean, they sometimes want people to just show up in support of their union drive and show up to the board of the library, which is not, apparently is not necessarily fighting this. Or some board members aren't. I mean, but they desperately need a union. And they hope that Hamilton County, a much larger library system than Claremont County, would follow suit. They hope that. I mean,
Any other announcements? Your
Well,
page.
yes,
They said
it will
5
not be
pages of
my-
announcements.
It will not be my 5 pages, I just have one. It's pretty far in advance, but on October 29th, the PAC that I work for Our Future, is hosting a free screening of a documentary that we made called Promises Broken. It's about the Lordstown GM plant closing, and it tells the stories of a lot of workers that were impacted by it. There's going to be a panel there. We know that Representative Kathy Ingram will be there, Pete McClendon from the AFL-CIO. We're still working to get an affected worker on it, but it's free, 7:30. There's a Facebook event if you're interested. You can just show up. We'd like if you sign up for your tickets online. But again, free, October 29th, 7:30.
Where?
Thank you.
Where?
Oh, at the Esquire Theater. Sorry.
On Ludlow.
On Ludlow,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Now Yates?
Yeah.
So it's time to sign up to hand out literature on November 5th at your polling place. You have a precinct executive, that means the party representative from your precinct, unless you don't. Most precincts do, and that person should be organizing an effort. I'm the precinct executive for 15F, but the sainted Susan Namey is managing the signups for that. So please be aware that if you vote absentee or in person at the Board of Education, Board of Elections early, you will be free all day long to take at least a 2-hour shift at your polling place. If you don't know who your precinct representative is, call the Hamilton County Democrats office and find out.
Also, the teachers are paying.
The teachers are doing what?
The teachers union.
The teachers are paying, if you work all day, $150, get a free lunch and a couple of breaks. If you work a half day, it's $75. So there's a couple of ways you can help out if you need money or if you just want to volunteer. But I think even if you don't know who your precinct is, you can check with Eddie Davenport about times, because he's got a spreadsheet that has which polls are paid and which ones aren't.
That's right. And so in other words, if you have like a high school senior or
If you have a child or somebody that's gonna be in town, a high school senior, something like that, would like to earn $150 for the day, it's a really good thing for them to be able to do and be politically active. So, just contact me if you have somebody that you would like, because we still have slots that need to be filled.
I just wanted to ask how we could get a hold of this Eddie Davenport, but if we can contact you, Katie, that makes it easier. Okay,
I can give you Eddie's number.
Well,
Just a minute. So Eddie Davenport is the paid leader of the Hamilton County Democrat office on Webland Place. That's who he is. So, Hamilton County Democratic Party, you can contact Eddie. Okay.
but he's not paying.
No, he's not the one paying, people. It's not the party, it's the
Like Harriet
teachers.
Russell's.
Who?
Harriet Russell, but I don't.
Harriet Russell.
Harriet Russell,
Okay,
and I'm working with her
that's
too.
good.
so
All right.
Michelle Dillingham, Harriet Russell, and I.
I have 2 short announcements. Anybody else? Here. Marlena.
Marlena Brookfield running for Cincinnati Public School Board this year. So today marks 3 weeks to Election Day. Thank God for that. And I wanted to remind people there is a campaign finance deadline coming up. From day one, I promised that I was going to be a 100% publicly funded campaign, no corporate donations, because people vote, not money. And these are going to be public records once they come out, once they've been reviewed. So I would urge everyone to look at all the campaign finance reports, not just for school board candidates, even though that's the race I'm in, but all candidates, and see even the people that you may support, can they say the same? Can they say the same of where their funding comes from?
Go for it. Okay. Karen and Judge Tyrone Yates are hosting an open house with special guest Nadine Allen on Monday, October 21st. That's coming up real soon. From 5:30 to 8 p.m. at their home at 6659 Kennedy Avenue. I'll give that to Peter. Okay, and I just wanted to announce just another thing to support the president. That according to the United Nations, the United States is the largest delinquent nation in the world. We currently owe the UN $381 million in back payments and $674 million for this year. 64 countries out of 193 are behind in its payments. And us being behind is not showing good judgment, to my mind. Just, there you go. I'm getting a little personal here. Okay, and without further ado, I'm going to introduce Kathy. Kathy comes with us, and she is with the Local Initiative Support Corporation, a community-based development group. Here we go, Kathy.
I have to get the technology going, but I want to say, if you just sign me in, get yourself in. Thank Alberta for the laptop, because I couldn't have done this without her. It's really good to be in a room for the Democrats.
Microphone can't hear you.
Oh, it's really good to be in a room full of Democrats. I can't tell you, this is my crowd, so I really appreciate being invited to speak. I think you heard from Stephanie Mose from Legal Aid a month or two ago about the problem of affordable housing that we have in our community. I'm here today to tell you what we're doing about it. I hope that's okay. I hope that's what you were wanting, because we're taking it a step further. So I run an organization locally called LISC for short. We do community development lending. We support neighborhoods. We're a part of a national organization out of New York. We're in 35 urban cities in the country and about 48 rural. I've been there for about 12 years, and my background's in real estate development, so I know a lot about housing. And we've been just working in neighborhoods. We've known that, we went through the housing crisis with these neighborhood groups. We just dealing with the blight and the foreclosures and policies around foreclosures over the years. But then suddenly in 2016, things started changing. The market started getting stronger. People are starting to move back into the cities and into neighborhoods, and the market is coming up. I mean, we saw that in Over the Rhine. We're going to see it in a lot of other, not inner ring neighborhoods, but neighborhoods adjacent to Over the Rhine, like West End and Walnut Hills and Evanston. Madisonville, yes. And so we knew that this was a problem. But then Vice Mayor David Mann in 2016 made an announcement when the Blue Ash Airport was for sale and council was, they were doing a feeding frenzy about the money, and so they were spending it every which way. David Mann said, I want to put $4 million of this money into affordable housing. That's the first time in my 12 years at LISC that I heard a public figure say we had a problem with affordable housing. So I was excited. I immediately called him and said, $4 million is nowhere near enough. We have to leverage this. We have to make this housing trust fund. We have to build this fund. So he allowed me to put together a task force, of which Stephanie Mose, who talked to you from Legal Aid, was on, and a number of other affordable housing providers. We did not leverage that money. We got spent on homesteading and renters equity programs, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. But what he did was pass legislation for a housing trust fund. There are 138 housing trust funds all over the country, and it's money that goes into supporting affordable housing. We have nothing like that here, but we have the legislation and an unfunded housing trust fund. So today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the affordable housing journey that we've been on. I think I'll just stand back here. And then tell you what we've done sort of to date, and then what we hope maybe even to get your support for in 2020. So because David Mann announced this about affordable housing, we talked to him about, well, where do you think is the greatest need? Because we really don't know. There's no numbers out there to show that. And he said, oh no, I know people that are, workforce housing is the greatest need. We need to put more money into workforce housing, which is 80% of area median income, so people making $40,000 a year and up. And I said, well, how do you know that? I mean, where are the numbers that show that? And he said, well, Steve Leeper from 3CDC told me that. Well, of course, in Over the Rhine, workforce housing is a huge issue. Because you can't find apartments for the servers that work in restaurants and service-related fields. But I said, how does he know that? Where are the numbers? So that compelled me to ask our national office for a grant to do nothing but study the problem. So we hired the Community Building Institute out of Xavier. They do a lot of these research studies to just analyze the problem. So at the end of 2016 and 2017, they did the Hamilton County Housing Affordability Study. So I have a link to that study on our website and on the CBI's website, and I'm happy to share that with all of you, but it really breaks down the problem. The study showed that we have, and you've probably seen this 40,000 unit gap. The study showed that the hardest hit groups are from 0 to 60% area median income, meaning you're making less than $24,000 a year. And there are 40,000 people that cannot find housing that they can afford. And this includes 10,000 seniors in Hamilton County. And that's no surprise to any of us. But what was surprising is that everybody thinks workforce housing is a problem. And it really is that these folks are in that under $24,000 a year are cost burdened to a point where they're spending 50 to 80% of their income on housing. That's why we have such a high poverty rate. That's why we have a homeless problem. And even worse, we have a huge eviction problem. I don't know if Stephanie mentioned to you that Ohio is number 10 in the country for evictions, and Hamilton County has led the state in evictions in the last 2 years. Over 8,000 filed evictions. And so, when you have bad credit, you have an eviction on your record, you can't find housing. And anyway, that's not the purpose of my of my talk, but it is a huge problem and it exacerbates the housing issue that we have in Hamilton County. So the journey that we went on, in addition to that study, we did a roadshow. I did talks like this in front of everybody. I was out trying to raise money for it and raise money for the Housing Trust Fund. I spoke in front of the Greater Cincinnati Foundation Board and in front of Bethesda Inc. Foundation, which is the largest health foundation in the city. And they have just made the determination that they're going to switch their grant making from mostly hospitals to social determinants of health. And they admitted that housing was probably one of the foundational problems with social determinants. So they asked me to come and speak and say, what can they do? Well, that was a great opportunity. And I said, well, you can put money into this. We have a housing trust fund, you can put money into that. And both these boards, like smart people and connected people, but both these boards said, where's the city and where's the county on this? Where's the public sector? I said, well, David Mann thinks it's a problem, but that's it. There's no dedicated funding source. There's no recognition that this is a problem in our neighborhoods. And so they said, we would love to put money into this effort, but affordable housing is a big problem. Is it homelessness? Is it evictions? Is it the 17,000 vacant properties we have in Hamilton County that need to be, either blight removal or renovated for affordable home ownership? Whatever the issue, we need to know, and we need to know what the public sector dollars are going for. So we went back to the city and the county and said, would you lead a housing strategy? The city of Cincinnati hasn't had a housing plan other than their block grant money plans. Hasn't had a housing vision plan since 1983. We have a copy of that plan, and it probably isn't much different than what we're going to come up with this year, but the fact that there isn't a strategy is why when we had homeless camps downtown, why everybody just reacted. There's no policy for that. There's no policy for how we invest our dollars to take care of the neediest, to take care of the elderly, to take care of people with disabilities where you cannot find housing. So we asked the candidates who would be running for mayor next year if they would support our effort and do a council resolution. And they said yes, and then we went to the mayor. We went to the mayor last, because I didn't think that the mayor would lead this, and he won't. But he didn't say no, and he said, I just want to know what you're coming up with. And I said, well, this is a community-wide effort. This is not me or our office. This is all the housing folks that we can reach out to in the county. So we got the blessing, we got a resolution from the city, and in January of this year, we convened about 40 housing professionals, all the usual legal aid and Talbot House and Strategies to End Homelessness, all the usual folks that do housing providing. And then we invited what we call the everyday experts, the people living with potential evictions, people living in homelessness or on the verge of, people that can't find housing. And we did a lot. We got a grant from Greater Cincinnati Foundation to hire a group called Cohere. They actually do these community conversations with people out in the neighborhoods and brought us a lot of qualitative information. So we had all of those people in the room, and those people came up with a vision statement and a core set of principles, which is what is up here on the board, that would guide our housing strategy work. And we all decided that given the State of Black Cincinnati report from Urban League, the work that Greater Cincinnati Foundation is doing around equity, that if we didn't ground this study in equity and equitable development, that it would be a waste of our time, basically, because we had to call attention to that as well. So the housing strategy, Greater Cincinnati Foundation put up $90,000 for this effort. We also got money from JP Morgan Chase, PNC Bank, Wells Fargo, the Mayerson Foundation, and Bethesda Inc. because of both Bethesda Inc. and Greater Cincinnati Foundation Board said, we want to know what the strategy is. I asked them to pay for it, and they did. It was the easiest money I have raised in my nonprofit work. So we, the whole group, I say we loosely because there's probably 80, 90 people involved in making this decision. But we decided that production, preservation, and protection were going to be the three sort of themes of the housing work. You can imagine what all that is. We also wanted to meet that 40,000, meet the need of the 40,000. We wanted to make sure we engaged all stakeholders. So in addition to all the housing folks, we have developers at the table. We have representatives from city councils. We have Invest in Neighborhoods. We have our community development corporations. We have so many different groups. We constantly reach out to the city, and city has staff that support this. The county, we divided the county's 49 jurisdictions into 3 groups, the A, B, and C list. I took the A list, those were the easiest to talk to. The C list were the ones that probably wouldn't have anything to do with talking about housing. And we did deep dives. We had one-on-one conversations with the administrators or the heads of their economic development or the mayors in many instances, just to say, tell us about your housing. What are your issues? What are you seeing? What do you need help with? So we have all of that data, and we have a lot of recommendations that came out of that to be able to give to the county. And the county's very receptive, by the way. The problem is they've never had a housing strategy, but the county has 49 jurisdictions and they're all different. And they all want to do their own little thing in their neighborhood. There's also a lot of housing groups, and there's a lot of policy groups. We have AHA, the Affordable Housing Advocates. Stephanie Mose from Legal Aid leads at least 2 policy groups, and then the city and the county have a joint vacant property task force that's been meeting for 2 years that does nothing but focus on policies. And then we have the Amos group. I mean, there are 5 or 6 different policy groups. Our goal here is to pull all of those together, and they're all at the table, to pull all of those together so we can have a unified document that captures the policies, that we can go to council, that we can go to the county and say, this is what the community is working on. So we're trying to have a holistic approach and one vision, which is going to be hard for the county and the city. So this was just our initial steering. This is all process stuff, but this is our steering committee. The Housing Authority, Greg Johnson, who runs the CMHA, was at the table. The city and county both have representatives. As I mentioned before, we have Greater Cincinnati Foundation who's paying for this, so they're at the table. And developers and our ongoing everyday experts who've been increasing in number. The steering committee basically identified the problem. We put out an RFP, request for proposal. We hired a market research firm out of the University of Pennsylvania. They've done at least 2 or 3 housing studies around the country. We liked one of the studies, which was the the city of Philly did a study that we really liked a lot. So we picked them, and they were also the cheapest. But they're great, and they're not only do the market research, they've sort of helped us with the themes, and we have come up with, on the bottom, the 5 sort of topic areas that have bubbled up over the 3 or 4 group meetings that we had. Each one of these topic areas formed working groups, and they've been meeting all summer long, and their recommendations or their draft strategies are due this week. They go to the consultant's there's a lot of overlap in these committees. I'm on the financing and resources, and of course, I want to put together a big fund that is parallel with the Housing Trust Fund. And what we're doing is waiting until all the recommendations come through. So is the fund going to address evictions? Is the fund going to address affordable home ownership? Is the fund going to address, we're just not sure yet. In addition to these 5, there are 3 other groups that have been meeting. Strategies to End Homelessness has a group called the Homeless Clearinghouse, which is a HUD-required body, and they meet on a regular basis. They did a strategic plan this summer, so we took all of the work that came out of that group. Greg Landsman, Councilmember Landsman, is doing an eviction task force, so the recommendations that come out of that will feed into this. And then Councilmember Smitherman is running a property tax review committee that's been ongoing for an entire year to look at property taxes and some of the tax benefits and the tax rebates that we give developers. So that's actually happening, and those recommendations are due. So all of that will feed into this. So we will have, so here's, I know this may be hard to read, but I talked to a group yesterday who asked me, what are some of the things that are bubbling up? So in each of these committees, these are just some of, it's like code enforcement. Now is a big county thing. They need code enforcement because there's so many bad landlords that don't take care of their property. Rental registration is to address that very issue, really bad actors. Just cause eviction will get at being able to protect tenants' rights a little bit more. So there's just and I'll leave this slide up here for a while so you can take a look at it. These are just some of the ideas that are bubbling up in these committees. From this point, when these are due this week, the consultant will come back. We have a big you all come meeting next week. I think there's like 150 people that have signed up, people that have been involved in this process all year long are coming back to hear what has bubbled up. And that's the full group meeting on October 21st. And then in November, we're going to do a road show. We're going to come out to groups like yours. I'm to present to the school board. We're going to present to the apartment association. So we're going out to a lot of groups, community council meetings, to say, here's what we're hearing, here's some of the draft recommendations, and get feedback. It's kind of like a road show that we really need to do to get as much community feedback as possible. So this is a community-wide vision, not just our vision. And then the plan will be, that draft will go in December, our consultant will write it up, and we've actually hired, with some of the funding that we got, we hired the Community Building Institute to take all that research, to take all that data, and to condense it into into an executive summary so that it will be palatable to read. I mean, the fair housing study was also done by the Community Building Institute, and it was probably 500 pages. And I'm sure this report will come out about 500 pages. We don't want that. I mean, that'll be an appendix, but we wanted to be able to have, half a dozen slides to say, this is what our community needs. It's something we can take to community council. It's something we can take on the road. So that's the process, and I'll leave that slide up. That's what we're doing, and we're hoping that next year we will be able to affect some of the policies, and we will be able to work on building up our housing trust fund. Questions?
First of all, thank you very much for the work that you've been doing and that all the people that have been working with you on this. I know this must be a tremendous effort. I listened very carefully to what you were talking about, and I see an overlap here between another issue that this group has talked about at length many times, and that's the tax abatement issue in this city. And I live in an area where the majority of tax abatements in the city are currently going to, and it is one of the wealthiest areas in the entire city, and that is Hyde Park. Hyde Park is receiving the lion's share of tax abatements because property developers can make the greatest profit when they build a house that costs a minimum of $600,000. That is where the profit is at. And areas that desperately need, and this is where your group comes in here, that need housing development, they're not getting those tax abatements. They're not going to those places. And I'm looking at all of that and I'm thinking,
I'm not seeing where the addressal of tax abatement problematic comes in. And I'm wondering, is Michelle Dillingham and some of the others that have been working so hard on this tax abatement issue, corruption, you have to call it, right here in Cincinnati, are they involved in that? Because without that, I don't really see this coming forward.
I don't either.
So Chris Smitherman is leading the tax review committee. I know Michelle has been involved in that committee. I'm actually on that committee. We have repeatedly said exactly what you're saying, that this is not fair, it should be targeted, but this is coming down from the leadership. And if you remember 2 years ago when the CRA, was up for renewal, there was a survey that was sent out. I've never seen the results of that survey, but I filled it out. And, it's something that they had to do. I'm sure everybody complained about this issue because it's so unfair. And you can see the map you're talking about, that the lion's share goes in Hyde Park, Mount Lookout. Mount Adams is also in,
Exactly.
and over the Rhine. You can see that clearly on the map. It's on the city website. So this is a battle that we need to fight, but we're doing it through the Property Tax Review Committee because they're already set up to do that. So that's one of the recommendations. But they're dealing with the school board and the union at the moment, and the mayors, they're not speaking. So I don't know what's going to happen with the tax abatement.
You're dealing with two different issues. The 1999 tax abatement agreement between the city and Cincinnati Public Schools only deals with commercial property. They have no skin in the game over the private ownership. So that's a huge problem because, as on Sioux Street over here, somebody's building a big old house, $750,000 house, and they got 3 kids moving into it. They're not going to be paying for those kids to go to school, but everybody else around them is going to be paying taxes. So
the school board's not held harmless with the 25% on single family residential?
No, absolutely, that is not part of the 1999 agreement. We are trying to have that be part of it, and I know in the property tax abatement group that Chris Mitman is working on it, to basically add to what the city is trying to do the targeted neighborhoods instead of the whole point was to bring people back into the city. Well, they're already in Hyde Park, they're already in Mount Adams, they're already in Mount Lookout. So they're missing the whole point of why that law was put into place.
I encourage you all to show up at the Property Tax Review Committee. I think it's this Thursday.
It is this Thursday.
I would
10 o'clock in the morning.
encourage all of you to show up.
Why don't you announce where that's at?
I've got it in my phone.
I went to it last year, and it's a rubber stamp.
It is.
They don't give you any time to speak or anything. It's just, in fact, the people on the committee don't even show up. They send their surrogates.
It's true.
And it lasted a half hour. So I thought it would be a place where, we could be heard.
It was a joke.
It's a joke.
We all went there. We weren't able to talk. We weren't able to hear anything of any significance. It was an absolute joke.
Yeah, and the developers clearly have convinced a lot of people in the political arena that they will not continue to develop around here if they don't get everything they want. And the politicians, of course, have fallen for this. And a lot of the politicians, David Mann, I met with him, he's so proud of all that they accomplished downtown. And of course, downtown is cool. But at what point do you say to them, let's let the free market kick in? And, they all love to talk about the free market, but then that's in public, but behind closed doors, they're grabbing everything they can get from the taxpayers. And it's really hard to get past their political power because the politicians depend on that money. And the office, what's that office called where they approve all this stuff? I forget. The city manager's office.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard their presentation before the city council, and it was just, it might as well have come out of the mouth of the developers. It was all about how important it is to support the continued development. Well, it's a matter of priorities and values, and it is well known that if you don't have good public transportation, if you don't have an educated workforce, if you don't have good infrastructure, the amount of fancy buildings you have is not going to draw corporate world who creates real jobs. It's going to, what we're doing is we're putting all our money into buildings, not jobs, not transportation, not infrastructure, not the things that would would really help with housing because people could afford housing. If they're going to be putting money into development, they need to reprioritize. It needs to go to the areas that need it. It's ridiculous the amount that's coming into these wealthy neighborhoods. And I understand that comes from the state. The residential development is a statewide issue. And the city council members use that as an excuse why they can't do anything about it. But it's a convenient excuse. I think if they really wanted to, they could put in restrictions.
Yes, they can.
Martha? Listen, I'm very disappointed you didn't even mention the Homeless Coalition. The Housing Trust Housing Fund was created by them. And they've worked hard to get money into it. They're working right now. All these actors you're speaking of, all these groups that are pitching in and hiring people to study, that reminds me of the whole United Way fiasco a few years ago, where we were all giving money, or some people were, to United Way to solve a certain problem for young children, and it was all going to their choice of researchers to study the problem. Nothing came out of it, practically nothing.
Josh Spring from the Homeless Coalition's on the steering committee,
Well,
and he is
I
running the policy and zoning committee.
Well,
I apologize for not mentioning
well,
them, but they
yes.
are a key player in this, and they would not have, we would never have overlooked them. They're a key player.
Yes, I mean, they're the player,
Well,
as far as I know.
I don't want to diminish what you're doing. I think it's very important. I congratulate you on all that hard work. It's just, we look forward to hearing how this problem is going to really be addressed. And you haven't gotten there yet, and I look forward to you coming back and telling us, because you're still in the process. I understand that. But I think you just are it's great you're here to hear the frustrations and our own concerns, and I thank you for coming and for your work. It's hard work.
Paulette?
I don't want to be discouraging, but I spent a year and a half fighting a very corrupted development
Not turned
that's trying
on.
to come in, and successfully,
Is it turned on?
people was able to stop that in the area in which I live. And I learned more than I wanted to learn about my city government. And I learned about paid lobbyists. Within the zoning committee, within the entire city planning, we have, it's legal to have paid lobbyists. And these developers have paid lobbyists. And they donate heavily to the election of their choice of city council members. And they are going to have the final vote. And trust me, I know this because I've been in every single one of these meetings working on trying to stop developments that were coming into areas where we didn't need them, and there were other areas that did need them. And what you find out is that they've spread a lot of money around, and they have a good chance of getting the votes that they want. And that's something I wouldn't have wanted to know. And I found out about it the hard way. And there's another aspect of this, which I think that your committee is really going to need to look at, and that's the whole issue of the problem with leads. LEAD's money is profoundly involved in this, in maybe one aspect that your committee look at, because people pay attention to this in this wealthy city, is our beautiful old homes being destroyed. That'll get people more interested than they will about poverty-stricken people in areas that need a vote. And I'm serious about that. And right in the areas we're talking about, Hyde Park, Mount Lookout, Mount Adams, beautiful, beautiful old homes that have floor joists that are 3 inches thick, that a modern, and I know construction, that modern houses couldn't begin to compete with. Those homes are being torn down, and why? Because a developer can construct a LEEDS approved house, and that family is going to get a tax abatement, guaranteed 10 to 15 years tax abatement. They can flip that house, and that's what they're going to. They're building and flipping, and then that goes to the next owner. You pass on these tax abatements. I live in one of those neighborhoods. I can't tell you how much my taxes have gone up. And we're going into retirement right now, so we are paying for all those people, as Katie said. They're not paying for the taxes, for the schools, for the zoos, for everything else. The rest of us are. So you've got the double problem of people that are aging and want to stay in their place, and they're wondering, can I afford to pay these taxes here? And it's ironic, but I think that you might actually get some help out of some committees, Save Our Beautiful Homes in Cincinnati, that will fight to prevent all of this destruction of houses and bringing in that's where the money's going. That is where the money in development is going.
Just one word of, a little bit of hope maybe. And I don't know how many elections ago, Jane, you might be able to tell me, where we voted for the city council races and the mayoral races, that no longer for the campaign finance, they are no longer to be able to list the LLCs as contributors to their campaign. So in other words, when their campaign finance reports come in, we're not going to see LLCs from Texas and California and all these. And that's where the developers hid their money. Now in the campaign finance reports, we're going to know exactly who is contributing and how much they contributed. So that campaign finance change that we all voted for in Cincinnati will affect our next city council and our next mayoral race. So there's a little glimmer of hope, but the work that, we've been working with Cincinnati Educational Justice Coalition and Michelle Dillingham for the past 6 years. And it took us clearly almost 3 years to start getting the data. And when Dusty Rhodes, who's not one of my favorite people in the world, but Dusty Rhodes can basically say, we have tax abatements run amok. That's exactly what's going on. There was no database until 2 years ago. So there's an underlying effort going on here, but the line that I've been saying, no matter what we do, follow the money. Follow the money, and that's where it is. Follow the money.
Kathy, you and I kind of talked. My experience with Springfield Township and going to township meetings, there's vast public opposition to Section 8 and affordable housing. And I mean, these are homeowners do not want it. I mean, I saw people screaming. East Priceville Improvement Association, Springfield Township meetings, opposition is stiff. And so the trustees are saying, well, we're going to get more out of commercial development anyway. So we're not interested in housing. So there's the challenge is not just the people at the top. I'm saying it's also the general public.
Yeah, and we heard that loud and clear in the county. But I will say that when we did our deep dives with county administrators in many of the jurisdictions, what we heard was the need for populating their communities and more density and senior housing. That was a huge takeaway for me. That people can't age in their homes, and they need to be able to sell their homes and move on, but they want to stay in that community. But there isn't senior housing, so a lot of them are thinking about changing the density and the zoning so that they can do senior housing. I heard that from so many places. It was amazing. It just totally amazed me. But that's a hard sell in the county. I agree with you.
not a question actually for you, but since we were talking about campaign finance, don't just look at city council, also look at your school board race, especially Cincinnati Public, because we do, or the district rather, does have a lot of real estate under its belt, not just the existing buildings, but other properties that they're eyeing. And fun fact, there are no limits to campaign donations for the school board, unlike for city council. So if someone wanted to give me a check for $10,000, as long as it wasn't from a corporation, I would say, hey, cool, that day hasn't come. But the fact of the matter is, when these campaign finance reports do come out, one filing deadline has passed already. Please check them out and see who is behind the folks that are running, who's behind the incumbents, who's behind the non-incumbents.
Follow the money.
Good question.
Sorry, go ahead. Hi, Kathy. I'm Tommy Tim, and I retired after 30 years, worked for Works America, just for
I can't hear you, please.
Pull it up to your mouth.
So, of course, financing is going to be extremely important, and we don't even need to dwell on the issues of federal financing and the cuts that the administration, huge cuts in HUD, etc. One glimmer of hope I had heard on the radio, and I just wonder if you heard anything about it. A major insurance company, health insurance company, realized that housing was really key to lower rates of the people who are paying for their health insurance. So they themselves started investing in housing. And I just think that's an issue that needs to be known, and the resources talked about, and other insurance companies convinced that perhaps this is another way of achieving some financing that desperately needed to make any plan work.
That's actually a good point, and I am hearing that. We're actually working with Mercy right now on a health and housing program. Robert Wood Johnson Foundation funded a research study 2 years ago to see what healthcare systems in the country are focused on housing. There were 11.
Wow.
Only 11. And so they invited all 11 to like a year-long learning lab so they can learn from each other, so they can figure out how to scale the work. And Mercy, since it merged with Bon Secours out of the East Coast, and Bon Secours has been doing affordable housing for about 10 years, they became part of that. So now Mercy's trying to figure out how they're going to be a partner. But it's also the Bethesda Inc. Foundation. I've heard from CareSource, which is an insurance health company. I'm not exactly sure what they do. Medicaid, okay, so I'm hearing from them. They want to do some kind of a pilot in the region. So I think we need to focus on like the social determinants and go after folks like the healthcare system and insurance companies, as opposed to relying on our city, because we have a very strong development friendly administration. That is not going to change for a couple of years, so we got to do a workaround, and that's what I'm hoping to be able to do.
Thank you.
Just a real quick question. Does anybody know when they give a tax abatement to a developer and they promise certain things, has anybody started following up whether they even do what they promise?
They don't.
No, there's no accountability.
There's no accountability, they can flip.
There's no person assigned. The developer fills out paperwork, turns it in. The developer fills out paperwork, turns it in, and it's filed at the city manager's office. And as long as the paperwork fits the requirements, that's the end of the story. And the developers know there's nobody hired to go out and confirm what's on the paperwork. They just tell the city manager's office, and the city manager's office accepts it. And they don't have a person who, they have a person who checks up the paperwork. But my other question is, this is a societal issue. It's not just about finding housing. It's about changing and have the changing neighborhoods and making neighborhoods more diverse. Because what we have, we need an education piece in this. And, you know, neighborhoods, we can talk big, but we have to open ourselves to more diversity. And we have to quit having these ghettos. Ghettos aren't working. It's bad for the city. It's children who go to schools in neighborhoods where everybody is the same as their family. They're not really prepared for the real world. And that's true with all children. You know, so I think socially, we need to really take a look at ourselves too and think about, you know, what we can do to be more accepting of diversity in our neighborhoods, and then fight for that too.
Are you studying the neighborhood rubric developed by IJPC? And have they sent it to everybody on council? Or have you sent it?
So are you talking about the Peasley?
Yes.
Yes, in fact, we invited all the neighborhoods together to hear their presentation. I'm pretty sure they sent it to council, but that's something that
I mentioned it to all the councilors. David Mann wrote me back and said, please send me a copy of this rubric. So I contacted Peasley, and apparently they did send him a copy. But the point of this, main point of that rubric, is that when developers want to come in and try to take over neighborhood, as they did for the football stadium, for instance, the soccer, the neighborhood council has a say in that. People in the neighborhood have to agree to what the developer's going to come in and do. If they need some development, okay. If they don't, no. If they don't feel they will benefit in any way from this kind of development. So, you have all kind of actors on your forums and committees, oodles of them, probably good actors and bad actors, I dare say, although you may not look at it that way. I appreciate all this information from these guys over here too. That's all very interesting.
Okay, sounds like we're here, and I want to thank Kathy Schwab. Thank you, Kathy Schwab. Excellent, well done. I want to invite you back for next week. We have the school board endorsed slate, Bolton, Jones, Davis, and Bowers. But we know our number one candidate is here in the room with purple hair. Here she is, Marlena. I want to encourage all of you to take a sample ballot. Make sure you get a sample ballot somewhere along the line. And if anybody needs help making a sample ballot, I'm happy to do that with you today. I will help looking it up on my little computer here. Please come on back for that. So we have a great program for next week, and the week after that, Arca Underwood. We're going strong here. So thank you for coming. You are a great audience. Thank you for being here.